Parasite is the latest Angel Studios movie to drop in theaters, so it's time to open our eyes and decide if it's worth watching or not. Hey everyone, welcome to Cinema, where we focus on a film. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema. Let me know down in the comments below if you've seen it, what do you think of it, is it good, bad, or somewhere right in the middle, and make sure to like this video, subscribe if you're ready to join in the film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. But going right into the synopsis, Ming-Wen grows up impoverished in China, doing everything he can throughout his schoolwork to become an eye surgeon going into America, while he also faces a cultural revolution that disrupts everything going on in the communist China, but eventually that leads him into these eye surgeries that he goes through different struggles that makes him confront his past and overcome traumas. Going into the positives, overall this is a faith-based film that can be for everyone. It doesn't mention God or faith too much really at all, and its focus is really on the down-to-earth scientific studies, everything these scientists are doing to figure out this research and everything. It's not too technical and it's terms and everything it's trying to describe, and everything that is going about within its flashbacks, how you see him grow up, and everything that flows throughout. It's a good progression to some standards, and what you're getting out of the acting is good for the nature of the story that's being told. It's nothing too extravagant, but where things are headed, you get the light-hearted, emotional tale that, based on a true story, can be uplifting based on the motivation that you see this Ming-Wen have for everything he is doing, trying to go through his studies, and in all the different trials he's getting to get eye surgery done right, to help people be able to see for the very first time or re-see after they've been blinded, and just how that retrains his mind and what the lessons you can get from it, while also just being able to be inspired by this true story, is something really good for the nature of everything it is doing. It is a faith-based film based on the insights you get from the visuals and a few mentions of God or faith and everything throughout to establish based on his character, based on his real life. But it isn't so much shoved in your face. It's not trying to teach you about Jesus or anything along those lines, which to this respective story is good to the nature of how well it is flowing, which Angel Studios seems to be doing a lot more frequently as of lately. And ultimately it grabs onto your emotions, pulls you into the right moments with the right timing of certain things that have to build up, things you have to learn about his past that flows into a connection going back to the present day throughout these different flashbacks that work effectively to the nature of this piece of information you don't know, and it's answered right after, or based on the past or the present, certain things you didn't expect to get answered, and then there's some things you sort of have a question of how someone got to this place. And so just seeing the journey that Ming-Wen as the main focus is going through, and how that is a reflection on his present and his past, how they collide and work on with each other, is something that's really important to pay attention with the story, but it does its job effectively with the nature of how the story is told. Going into some of the mixed elements, whether the points can work for you or they don't work for you, and I'm sort of mixed on them as well. It's just something with the flashback, certain pieces of information that get delivered from the past and into the present, whether there is deleted scenes that answer some of the questions. There are certain pieces of information with part of the family that Ming-Wen grows up with, or how they flow on with the story, that just don't always answer everything. That there are certain questions that do get answered that I wasn't expecting to, and then there's other pieces of information where you see the family is back in the US, but you don't know how they traveled, and you don't know necessarily how much pieces of information were meant to be transmitted, or if certain small details were important in the past that were presented in the future or present day, there's just something that there's a certain disconnect with how much they are trying to translate and travel to the present. Obviously, most of what they're trying to translate is based on Ming Wang's story, but when you don't always bring in the family or certain other details that present along the way, there's something that doesn't always work all the way. It doesn't wreck the film, but it is something that feels like a little bit absent from the whole complete story that they seem to be trying to tell. And there's also a couple mentions and certain jokes about the brother, how he's not really getting a job, or him at Ming Wang that is trying to get a girl, and there's not really a strong focus on why that's truly important, besides maybe something based on the information. But they also, for this story or this piece of life as a whole, feel sort of disconnected with the flow of the story, with the natural longevity of what this message is, with healing the blind, or everything goes about. These small little tangent or subplots, as you might call them, kind of have a disconnect. Or even the brother, his answer on getting a job doesn't necessarily get answered, at least on screen, or anything throughout what all goes about, where Ming Wang is the main focus. But there's also a joke in one sense about the brother still living with parents, and just how that all resolves doesn't really get fully fleshed out in a way that could be resolved in some sort of manner, or left out to begin with in a certain sort of way. But going into the negative, overall there's something with the story structure, with the flashbacks, that kind of have a disruption to the story. It's not a complete breaking point to the attention span I have of the story, but what I have to say with that is, even though the pieces of information that carry over from the flashback go into present, and how it all makes sense to the overall story structure, I think it has a good flow to it, but it still doesn't have the everlasting impact that I feel could be with a straightforward story. However they would design that sort of plot, it didn't have all those narrative beats that really hit strong, to where you're building up to different levels of momentum, whether it's straightforward through the past, then straightforward through however many years later, based on the present day when he's trying to cure illnesses in America. It just doesn't have that proper flow that feels exactly right for what this film kind of needs, even if the flow of the story isn't too distracting with those flashbacks. I understand what they're doing with them, and they don't feel unnecessary completely, but just with the way the flow ends up being, with the natural longevity of the story as a whole, and the messages and themes, it doesn't break the film, but it doesn't make the everlasting impact that I really hoped it would, that at least it's kind of being more of a one-time watch as a whole. And so therefore, I have to Sight a simply 7 out of 10. Let me know down in the comments below what you think of Sight, if you have seen it, if you like it, if you don't like it, or if it's somewhere in the middle, or if you're waiting for this review to help you see it or not. And let me know all that, and make sure to like this video if you enjoy it, subscribe if you're ready to join in this film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. So that's just all. Do yourself a favor and go watch a movie.